What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who served time at other prisons. We're going to be talking about life before prison, life in prison, life out of prison. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that will help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, folks, here we are. I have somebody, again, that's been referred to me, and Jason Rauschelbach, if you guys are playing the board game at home, I think was the third podcast, and Jason texted me and said, hey, you got to talk to Bill Glaser. I said, okay. And so I was driving down to Springfield, I think it was last week, and Bill Glaser and I got on the phone, and so I've got him here as a guest today. Bill Glaser, welcome in.
Thanks. How you doing?
We're doing good. So, Bill, you and I'm just going to give a quick summary. You were a guy that was well known in the finance world, real estate. You got kind of in a sideways deal with a builder, and became federal, and it was you got a 3-year sentence and wire fraud, and we're going to get into all that, but not deep into it. Just that's what happened, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Bad memory.
So. Let's go back a little bit, because I know you've lived a kind of one of those lives that you could write one of those scripts, that they write in Hollywood, the stories. The kid does this.
A fairy tale.
Yeah, a little fairy tale. So, you grew up in St. Louis.
I grew up in Chesterfield when Chesterfield was nothing.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to move his microphone closer so we can hear Bill. Bill, move up so we can hear you.
So we had
you go.
A farm out in Chesterfield, and nobody was in Chesterfield back then. It was just like being
farmland.
Yeah, it was being west of Chesterfield Mall.
Yeah,
and just kind of like lived this life, and went to high school out here and public school. And
what high school did you go to? That's a St. Louis
thing,
St. Louis
thing. It was Lafayette High School.
Lafayette High School. Yeah.
So I went to high school, went on to college, and
which was down in my home world. It was Springfield, Missouri.
Exactly.
Now it's Missouri State, was SMS.
So went to school there. Ended up not.
Did you ever eat in the Mexican Villa down there?
I did.
No, you didn't.
No.
Well, you missed you missed the burrito enchilada style. It's too bad. That's okay.
So I ended up not finishing, and came back and went to work for a bank.
Went to work for a bank.
So then I worked for a bank, and then I switched banks and held out until a local bank gave me their Frontenac office to do the brokerage.
Okay.
And I started doing brokerage at the Frontenac office.
You had to be pretty old or pretty young then, right?
I was a child.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy.
Were you in your 20s or 30s? Or what would you have been back in those days?
I was 28 years old.
28 years old. Wow. Okay.
And I was at this bank next to Schneidhorst.
Yeah.
And my then business partner and myself, we decided to open up our own business. So we built out our offices. We opened an office at Mason and Olive.
Yep.
And it was kind of wild because that was.
You would have been out there by my old cemetery, Bell Reef Cemetery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly where it was. And it was the
small world, huh, Bill?
It was the building with the orange light. I don't even remember the name of it.
Yeah.
Midland Group developed it. And we built out our offices, turned in our notices, and started a business. And it was great.
And what did that business provide people?
It was primarily just investment advisory services.
Okay.
And my business partner, myself at the time, and we had a secretary, and then we started recruiting brokers to work for us. And then that partnership broke up. I went out on my own. And when I went out on my own, I thought I'll never have a business partner again. And just started, we were making money just from day one, and all was good. And, the client base we were tight friends with our clients, and I just
I meant to ask you, Bill, because when you said you were growing up, I forget to ask you about your family. So you had mom, dad, siblings,
mother and father,
yeah,
all American
family.
Yeah,
How many
exactly.
siblings do you have?
I had an older sister and a younger sister.
Oh, you're the middle,
Middle
the
boy.
wild child.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So fast forward back up. I just want to make sure I got that because I've meant to ask you the whole family scheme there. So so you got the business going. You said, hey, life's good. This would have been what, in the 90s?
This was exactly 91 time period. Got the business going, up and going. All was good. And then we sold our house. We moved back over to a subdivision in Chesterfield. Lived there for a couple of years, and then I moved out to St. Albans.
Which is a beautiful, for those who are listening that are in Australia, that's a beautiful part of the country in Missouri.
Right. So we built a house, or we bought a house originally out there, lived in it for a couple of years, then sold that house and built a second home out there on the golf course, and it was like fantasy land. I mean, everything fell into place. The business was going great.
Life was good.
Life was good. We had one son, married, and all was good.
So the kids, how many kids you end up having?
Just one.
Just the one. And you got married. So you're a St. Albans, life's good, golf courses, two good golf courses, by the way.
Exactly. But I'm a terrible golfer.
Well, that's one of those sports that you can just never quite master. You can have a good shot, a good day, but never be a pro.
That's true.
So, Bill, everything's going pretty good. So how do you get introduced into this nightmare that you found yourself in? Because you're running with a good crowd, you're good people, you're making good money.
Well, I was at a restaurant, and my wife was out of the country at the time, and I had 2 car accidents that were back to back.
Nobody would wish that on anybody, would they?
Right. So then I had this massive concussion, and I met this guy. And I think that he knew that I was somewhat compromised at that point, that, the concussion was like a disaster. I was getting lost driving and so forth. And
concussions are serious, though. I mean,
it was a big deal.
I just was reading today that the new quarterback that they brought on from Mizzou, he's only 25 years old, and he had to sit out the whole season last season at Mississippi State because of a concussion protocol.
Right. It takes a long time to heal from the thing.
Yeah.
So I was being treated at BJC for the concussions, and I ran into him. I was going to dinner every night. First of all, when I was married, I couldn't cook, nor could I cook now. And
there's no judging on that.
It was survival. So I was going to the same restaurant. A friend of mine owned this restaurant, and I would go up there and have dinner, and then he started showing up, and then over and over and over. And then he was like, I'm trying to raise money. I'm building these houses, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And, I agreed to it. And
had you been in real estate before that, though? Is that something you dabbled in, the real estate world?
I liked the real estate business,
yeah.
And, I had a few things here and there, but nothing like what he was doing. It was he was tearing down houses and rebuilding them. It was like brick and mortar.
Yeah.
And you could drive by and you could see it, and that's kind of exciting. And so forth.
Especially when you in an area of Kirkwood, Webster Groves, Clayton, when those get redeveloped and you see, it changes the whole neighborhood.
Right. And, they're going in and buying, a very small house, and they're turning around, they're building this house that's taking up the entire
zero lot line house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it was just like a great thing. It was, something I think everybody likes, that brick and mortar. They can go and kick the bricks and so forth. And so I had mentioned this to 3 clients, and then the clients turned around and they met this guy, and I went with them. We went out there and took a look at him, and,
it all looked good.
Yeah, everything looked good, and everything seemed on the legit.
It's like you were telling me, Bill, that from your perspective, there's a lot going on with this development, this construction company. I mean, this builder. All the different things that you're seeing, you're talking about kicking the tires, you're seeing these houses, everything looks great, and Kirkwood's a wonderful place to build.
Right, and people are trying to buy these houses before he breaks ground on
them.
And even before this recent market craziness, that was like a hot area at the time.
Yeah,
and
always has been.
So these people are just like interested in buying these houses. You're looking at the things sitting there going, holy smokes. And he's got this one and that one. He can't buy lots fast enough and so forth. And he's trying to say, look, I need to expand my business. I need to buy lots. So I keep feeding this. I got this, these lots falling into place, right? Mm-hmm. One for the
Wants
next.
to keep up with the growth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it all sounded reasonable. And I just thought, well, this makes a lot of sense. He was offering a great interest rate to these people. And I thought, well, all's good,
Yeah.
Until he decided not to make payments to them.
That could be bad.
Now, in the downside of that.
But I mean, to go back on what you're talking about, many financial advisors will say investing in real estate is a very good thing to do.
Right.
Because there's a lot, I mean, people have got their money in the stock market as we speak, or watching it probably with bated breath, with a little bit of sweat running down there. But real estate, if you buy right, in the right areas and do the right things, it's almost always a pretty good investment unless something happens that you unforeseen.
And that was
that's what happened.
Item, the unforeseen.
Yeah.
So you just assume because this guy was like living large.
Yeah.
And it was not only just living large, it was at the point of him living large so quickly.
Yeah.
Now, I had been living out of St. Albans for 30 years.
Yeah.
So, and granted, I was living large, but it wasn't newly acquired.
Yeah. You saw this as a new opportunity to add to what you were doing in business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in doing so, we would go to dinner. We had mutual friends. Then the friendships grew and so forth. Then he ended up, buying a place at the lake, buying a boat, buying a car, buying all this. And I'm just sitting there thinking, well, good night. This is like crazy. And little did I know, he's using the money that he's taken from investors, not only that the investor that he met from me, but from other investors that he had outside, and he's spending that money.
Yeah.
And it was just, you're like in shock when he's not paying people.
Right. And you don't have any leverage.
Zero leverage.
Right.
None. You're just like calling him constantly saying, you got to make payments to these people. You got to be doing this. You got to be doing that. And it didn't happen.
Yeah, no response. So what was the next step that happened? Was it you're trying to do all you can do to try to push the sides together to make sure that these people keep or stay whole with their investment? Are you feeling like, Bill, that this could end up bad now? Do you feel like, are you thinking to yourself, uh-oh?
You kind of felt that way, that it was going to go bad, but then the same token, then he would give you reassurance. Oh, it's this is going to get better. I've got this.
He's a good salesman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, how am I getting, now looking back, I'm like, how did I get snookered by this?
Yeah.
But at the time, he's giving you reassurance. I've got a sale coming in, or I've got this closing, or I got that closing, and so forth. And he keeps buying time.
Mm-hmm.
It still wasn't making me happy of him buying time. But the bottom line is he bought time, and he bought more and more and more. But he's still playing hard. And you're thinking in the back of your mind, if you're not paying people, why in the heck are you
spending all this money on personal stuff? Yeah.
Why are you running around the way you're running around? Or, sell that car, sell that place at the lake, make payments to these people, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't happen.
So the people who weren't getting paid, I'm sure you're hearing from them.
I only had a couple of clients that I'd introduced, but there were a whole bunch of other people that were out there.
Had gotten into this.
And I'm sure that they were barking at his door as well.
Yeah.
And everybody was concerned, going, what in the heck is the deal with this guy?
Yeah. So when everything kind of started spinning, I think you told me you got a phone call to meet you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and at the time you probably got that, you were thinking, yeah, I do want to talk about this. Any way I can help.
So one of the investors went to the Fed.
Yeah.
And I knew that they were going to the Fed. Hindsight, I wish I would to the Fed with them.
With them, yeah.
Because it would have been both of us pointing the finger going back. And
Right.
then all at once, nothing happened. And then I got a phone call from my wife one day, and she said, well, somebody just rang our doorbell. And she's like, the FBI was here at our house. And she said they wanted to talk about him.
That'll take your breath away.
At the time, I thought, I haven't really done anything. And I'm
Right.
like, sure.
Yeah.
Give them my cell number. I knew that they were,
You thought you could be of help.
right.
Yeah.
and they want to talk about this guy. And I want to talk about this guy too.
Right.
So I agreed to meet them. Put it this way. I was so sure that everything was going to be like, okay, I went to meet them without an attorney.
Yeah.
Which now I would never even consider doing. But at the time I thought, I haven't done anything wrong.
Right.
Sure, I want to meet him. I want to talk
It's
about this.
interesting how that happens because, Russ Faria was on here a couple episodes ago, and he the thing about Pam with that NBC series, his wife gets murdered, stabbed 55 times, and he just wants to help find the killer, the person who murdered him. And the whole time he's talking to him, he thinks he's helping them, obviously without an attorney. And the whole time that he's talking to them, they're wanting and going to charge him with murder. And that's the thing that you don't know when you get caught up in these type of things is no matter what, you need to have representation.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
So then I went ahead and met them, discussed the whole thing that had taken place. And in doing so, time just went on, and I'm still thinking everything's okay.
Yeah.
Foolish me,
So when you got done with that conversation, Bill, did you think, maybe this isn't me helping them? Maybe they're taking a different path?
Well, the initial consultation with them, there were two of them and one of me. One guy's taking notes and the other. And we're not going to record this.
Yeah.
We're just going to take notes, see what you have to say and so forth. And we want to know what actually took place.
Not to intimidate you.
Exactly.
Right.
So they're going down this whole list of things, and I'm thinking that I'm helping, and I'm going to be helping my clients, and I'm going to be helping these investors. Yeah. And sure enough, we go through the whole thing. I walk away thinking,
I've been a help.
This is a good thing. This is going
and they were friendly.
Help everyone. Exactly.
Right.
I got two new pals here. Yeah. So then I get shocked when I find out that I might want to get some legal counsel.
So how? Because the only thing you and I talked about was you met them, you talked, you felt like you were helping them. What was the next step that you thought? They're looking at me.
So I then got legal counsel of a guy that I knew.
Yeah,
and he went and met with them
on his own without you. Yeah,
and he went down, met with them, and then he's like, "There's big problems here." Mm-hmm. And he goes, "They're looking at you, da-da-da-da." And then we kept going on. And then he made the comment that he wanted to turn around and have me come in and talk to them again. And then I start getting, nervous on this whole thing. And I mean, I was just overwhelmed. It's sleepless nights. It was everything. It was like.
Did the attorney, when he came back and told you that, was he saying that, hey, this could be getting into some deeper waters, or was he acting like that's not that big a deal, Bill? It'll be fine. You just go talk
Initially,
to him.
It was kind of
just going to be talking to him again, to the nice guys you talked to already.
Yeah. Initially, it wasn't, but then later, after I'd written him an initial check, then I came back and I'm writing him a second check.
Okay.
And then my wife then came into the office as well, and then he wanted an additional check.
So it's starting to add up.
So now it's starting to, okay, this is getting real now.
Yeah.
Now we could be buying cars,
right.
Right. And then it started going, okay, we got a serious problem here.
Well, I think the other thing, and this is something that we don't talk about much on this podcast, but the rapid speed that happens with going and getting an attorney, talking about the seriousness of this, all those things are dollars that are happening. And as those dollars are being sucked away, you also are losing the ability to really represent yourself, because you become someone that you weren't, because you don't have those dollars anymore. At a certain point, you can get to a point where you don't have any assets left, and then it's go time. Now do you want to go?
Exactly.
And so you were getting into a situation where you were adding up dollars on this representation, which I'm sure was uncomfortable for a lot of different reasons.
Well, not only that portion, but then my marriage was
in a bad way.
It was a disaster.
Yeah.
She felt that here she was being put out there, and being involved in this whole situation and so forth. And it was a very uncomfortable situation for me.
Did you know going into it that she might not be that rock solid glue for you to step through this nightmare?
I thought that she would totally be there for me.
You did?
Totally. And
so that had to be a total awful personal shock.
Well, then she was telling everybody that she would never, ever leave me. That she would always be by my side. You know, her religious background wouldn't allow her to leave me. And I mean, they're telling me this. I'm hearing this from third parties.
Yeah.
So that gave me a comfort there.
That you were going to be okay. You're going to have your mate.
Yeah, exactly.
To walk through this with you.
And it wasn't like we had like this wonderful marriage by any means.
Yeah.
I was probably the worst husband there ever was on the face of the earth, you know. Why she didn't leave me 10 years before that's like shocking in itself.
Yeah.
But then I'm sitting there thinking, okay, now I'm in the middle of this disaster.
Yeah.
And she's going to stick with me through this thing, which was like the most comforting thing ever.
Yeah. So how long does this last? How long did you walk through this molasses of a nightmare before you end up in a situation where they're saying, Bill, here's your deal?
This went on for months. And then they wanted me to come in and talk and speak to them to decide if they would reduce everything based upon my testimony.
Against the builder. Okay.
So then I'm getting panicked now at this point, going, holy smokes.
Yeah.
And then I'm wondering, do I really have the right person?
Right.
Do I really have a criminal attorney here? And I'm getting people telling me on the outside that were close to me going.
And everybody's got an opinion on that, which also freaks you out. Yeah.
And this isn't a road that I've ever traveled before, nor do I ever want to travel again.
Yeah.
So I was so taken aback by that. But then the next thing that pops in your head is go to the biggest one that's out there.
Right.
The one that's always out there in the media that's supposed to be the best.
Everybody knows about. Yeah.
Guess what? That was the door that I knocked on.
Yeah.
And that's where I went.
Yeah. So you're there. So you get to the point where you've got a choice. I'm going to take this to trial, and they rack up those number of years and counts and all that kind of stuff, or I'm going to take
the worst case scenario. Then we're going to take this to trial.
Yeah.
Me saying, look, I haven't done anything wrong here. There's no law that I've broken. What have I done? What law did I break?
Right.
And they're saying, well, you introduced these people over, this person to this, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, introduction's nothing. Well, you took money back. He gave you money back.
Right.
So then the press was telling this whole story that like they implied that I had, when he ran off with the money that I had. I'm like, that never happened.
Right.
Well, he did give me a kickback. I got a kickback on the thing. And that kickback is where the problem came in.
Yeah.
And then I was charged with wire fraud.
Wire fraud because of that. Right.
Exactly.
And wire fraud can carry, it depends, how many times they want to charge you with it, but it can be 10 to 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then there's this whole negotiation starts.
Yeah.
So then you're like, well, how can they negotiate that? And then you're going back and forth and back and forth, and you're trusting. And, at that point, no matter what you were doing, I had, at that point, given up my license. I had my Series 7 license of securities. I'd given up my license.
Yeah.
I had walked away from it because I was told, look, when they interview you for the FBI, and then at the same time, you're going to get FINRA is going to come back and question you with the Series 7.
Yeah.
Then at that point, here you're at risk. Now you've told this government agency this, and 9 months later, they're going to come back and ask you questions from another government agency. Well, they're going to compare notes.
Right.
And in that 9 month period, if something changes during that whole thing, now you've lied to the Fed.
Yeah.
So now
that's a whole nother charge.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you remember, that's actually how Martha Stewart ended up in prison.
Exactly.
Everybody always thinks it was security fraud or whatever the case it was, and it wasn't. They said that she lied to them. And that was her charge. But she'd be a fun interview because she's another one that
Martha came out better than I did, though.
Yeah, well, she did come out better than a lot of us did.
I didn't get to stay in a $3 million house in Connecticut.
So let's fast forward a little bit. So you, Bill, decide that you're going to plea.
Because they tell me everybody pleads. And I said,
well,
why
they do.
would everybody plead?
Actually, almost 98% of the people who are
Exactly.
indicted plea. So, yes, that is true. And of those 98% of the people indicted get convicted because they plea bargain. So you're in that world, 97, 98%.
So they said, we can fight this thing, but
Yeah.
you need to bring $1.5 million in,
Yeah.
and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to cost to fight this thing.
Right.
So then we start talking plea. And then at that point, my wife moved out.
Okay. So you're dealing with your personal tragedy at the same time you're dealing with
Right.
the business tragedy.
And I didn't have the assets to be able to fight this thing at that point.
Yeah.
I had changed attorneys, and then I actually filed for divorce from her to try to get assets. The attorney on the divorce side said, we'll file for divorce. We'll go in and we'll ask for emergency that she has to liquidate some of her funds in order to help you pay, because that's all joint assets,
Sure.
blah, blah, blah. They convinced me that way, which hindsight, I don't know if that was the best thing to do either.
Well, I don't think there's not a book that's written when you have United States of America versus you, because all of those things seem so rapid, so sudden, so overwhelming that you're always thinking, okay, I'm making the right decision here. I'm saving myself. I'm saving the family. I'm saving the business. And all those things are probably not the best decisions because they're made under duress and scared and stress and everything that goes on with that. And you look back on it and you think, God, why did I do that? Well, because I was absolutely overwhelmed and dealing with something I never dealt with before.
I should have had a third party there. Besides that, I was concussed from this massive concussion yet.
Yeah.
Then they did allow me to go out to California. I got treated for the concussion in California.
That helped?
Helped dramatically.
Okay.
But it was an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
And, I was just going back and forth and dealing with a divorce, dealing with the indictment, dealing with everything under the sun. It was, the stress level was unbelievable.
Yeah. There's no amount of stress like it.
Then you find out who your true friends are.
You do.
I think you've gone through this as well.
Yeah.
I had friends that showed up at my house every single day for 17 years, and then all at once one day, boop.
And then you get letters from people that you would have never thought that means so much.
It's unbelievable.
So it's what is it, that Tom Sawyer movie where he gets to look at his own funeral?
Exactly.
and he goes in there and he sees what everybody's saying about him. It's kind of like when you get sentenced, you get all these people who write you letters that you would have never have heard of because you've never been in this situation. But in this situation, people write letters for you. And those, I took some of those letters with me to Leavenworth because whenever I had one of those really down days, I'd take those out and think, oh no, there's people out there I can still connect with, and there's still feelings about,
it's funny
relationships.
You say that when you're in, and you are reading those letters, or you're reading you're looking at photographs of your family, and I can't even tell you what a help that was of reading letters, looking at photographs, and so forth. I was initially at a medical center because they had to do an evaluation.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you get sentenced to 3 years.
Correct. I plead 3 years.
Yeah, you plead 3 years. So you get told that you're going to Lexington.
I waited in the mail, and every day was like an anxiety attack.
Sure.
It's
a weird thing to wait for an envelope that tells you what prison you will go to.
And you're walking to the mailbox every day, and you're like in a panic when you open the mailbox up. And I mean, no one understands that until they're in that situation.
Well, it said Leavenworth, and I thought, oh my God, I know that one.
mine said Lexington. And I called up a friend, and they're like, oh, I know somebody that's in the prison business, and Lexington's like the greatest. Well, let me tell you, it was a disaster.
And you know what? I had that said to me too, and I have not heard anything good about that thing with Lexington. And do you mind talking about your experience there?
First of all, my experience there was...
How did you get there?
My sister drove me, and my sister saved me through this whole mess. Yeah. I don't know what I would have done with my oldest sister and my son.
Okay, so she's huge. The good sister.
Exactly.
Okay.
And her husband drove me there.
Okay.
We stayed at a hotel, and then we pull up in front of this place, and I'm telling you, windows broken out of it. this building is the most archaic thing that you could ever imagine. It was actually, I found out, it was the narcotic center or whatever of Kentucky. I think Marilyn Monroe was there or something. They actually tested drugs on people there, and I was like, well, how ironic is this? They've got all these drug dealers in here,
and here they are,
and here they test drugs, and they had rooms to see how much heroin these people could take without dying.
But I want you to walk me into that place. So you drive up to this, the windows are broken. Are you standing at a gate? You're voluntarily surrendering. Walk me inside.
I am standing outside my sister's car, and they said they're going to be another 45 minutes or whatever additional time. And I'm just panicked.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm dressed like Mr. Country Club.
Yeah. They love that there. Yeah.
And not realizing that the prisoners can look out and see you as
well.
Yeah. So they're seeing me standing out there, and then all of a sudden the guard appears, and
here we go.
He motions for me to walk over, and you remember this is a fenced place.
Yeah.
So I'm going through this fence, and they lock that door.
A lot of barbed wire.
Into another one, and then they lock that door. And then I go into another one. And then they walk you into this basement area.
Don't you start feeling different at that point, Bill? I mean,
totally.
You almost feel like that freedom that you had as you walk through is like coming off of your skin or something. It's like you're feeling different. You feel the freedom leaving you.
Exactly.
And it's a weird.
There's an anxiety to it, and then it's like everything's being taken away from you.
Yes.
And
anything that you had any control over, you've handed this over. And you're walking into something now that you don't know what you're walking into at all.
Not a clue.
Just the unknown.
And I didn't know what was going to happen 60 seconds later.
Yes, that's what's scary. So what did happen 60 seconds later?
They withhold every bit of information they could.
Yeah, and they do it on purpose.
So then I'm walking in, and then immediately they take your picture. Mm-hmm. And the minute they take your picture, now strip down naked. And they strip you down naked, and then you're just standing there. So you've got this room of people that are there. I mean, I shouldn't say a room of people. There's a couple of people that are standing there. And you're just standing there naked in front of them.
Right. It's dehumanizing.
Exactly.
But that's the immediate shock treatment of that.
And you know what I almost thought about that? I felt like it was that whole Nazi thing when they would strip the people off of the camps.
Yeah.
That's exactly the way I felt. I was stripped
immediately
down to
dehumanized,
nothing.
right.
I was waiting to come and give me a buzz cut any minute. You know?
Right.
It was unbelievable. So then all at once they throw you this roll of clothes, and they give you this pair of boxers that would fit a huge person. Mm-hmm. And they're this great big pair of orange boxers.
And Bill's not, for those who, we're not on YouTube today, he's not a huge person, so it didn't fit probably.
Exactly. You're having to hold these boxers up.
Right.
And it's just basically, and then they spray you with, I don't even know what that was.
Yeah.
They spray you with it.
Yeah. I don't even want to know.
Yeah, exactly. And here you are. And then they start processing you.
Yeah.
And you don't know, is this processing going to last for 10 minutes or is this going to be 5 hours?
Right.
And nobody will answer any question. If you ask something, they don't respond to anything. All they ever asked and responded to was, what do you want us to do with your clothes?
Yeah.
And I kind of looked down and I was like, mail it back to the house.
So did you have a mail it back?
I had to mail it back to the house.
I had worn stuff that I knew that I was okay for them to throw away because I didn't I didn't really trust them to mail it back to the house. So then you are escorted into general population at some point.
Not even that. So it was classified as a low. A medical center, the weird thing about Lexington is it's a medical center.
Yeah.
So it's behind a fence.
Yeah.
And here you sit, and you're heading into this area, and there's like 6 buildings. Half of them have a third of the windows broke out of them.
Yeah.
It's just an absolute disaster. This thing's from the turn of the century. And they say, go over to this building. Well, you don't know where this building is.
They just tell you to go.
And it's your tough luck, and the other inmates will take care of you.
Yeah.
And
I think you quickly learn when you get there that there's the inmate rules and then there's the prison rules. And you need to learn the inmate rules pretty quickly.
Exactly.
That's how you got to survive.
And not only that, when you're in a medical center, you're in there with people that were murderers that have worked their way down.
That have still mental issues.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And then in a medical center, there's all these sex offenders that have been. And sex offenders, for
Well,
people that aren't understanding this whole thing in prison, sex offenders are the worst.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're comfortable, I mean, you had an issue that happened in prison where you got into a fight. And
Right, I was choked out.
Yeah, choked out. And how soon did this happen?
And you really can't go to the guards in regards to this.
They'll
because
throw you in the hole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In order to protect you, we're going to lock you in a 8x10
For a long
room
time.
for a long time.
Yeah.
So I got choked out. You fight for your life.
Okay, so did this happen soon after you had gotten there,
Not
Bill?
long afterwards.
And did this person that you ran across, did you know that there was some weirdness there, or were you trying to stay away from him? Or
I learned early
it's kind
on
of a scary
to
story.
get up very early in the morning
Yeah.
and go take a shower.
Right.
And get dressed and stuff because you didn't want to deal with
Get away from everybody.
exactly.
Right.
So I'm in the shower, and the weird thing is the inmate that made the attack turned around and afterwards died in that same shower.
What?
Crazy. He had a heart attack and died there.
Wait. So this guy attacks you.
Days later,
And days later he dies?
he dies of a heart attack.
Wow, Bill.
It's crazy.
That is.
And it was just the whole experience of going in. And I was just telling somebody recently, here you were, and you go down to the chapel service, and it was in the basement. Everything's in the basement.
Yeah,
in this
dark
prison.
basement.
Well, the area that people like the craft area, so forth, was actually in the old morgue of this building.
Oh, God.
So you're thinking this, okay, here we are in this building that used to test drugs.
Yeah.
Why does this building need a morgue that can handle hundreds of people?
Yeah, you don't want to know that.
Exactly. It was creepy, just totally creepy.
Okay, so I don't want to leave this thing of you getting choked out. So this guy comes up on you. You know your life is you're in a situation.
Well,
here.
my voice, even to this day, I don't know if you notice when I'm talking, it goes raspy, then comes back.
You got a
It goes-
great voice. It's like a radio voice.
I'll never be hired for radio. My radio voice
That's
is
a
all
great.
over.
I was going to tell you that, Bill. I mean, you got raspy radio voice.
Sounds like I smoked too many cigars last night or something.
Did you? I mean, I know it's fight or flight when that happens.
Oh, without a doubt.
Did he sneak up on you, or did he come at you, or
Came at, grabbed my throat.
just immediately?
Because I look like the rich white guy.
Yeah.
It was always, and in prison they could tell.
I mean, for those who can't see Bill, you can look him up. He's a very good looking country club guy that could be on a magazine. So a person who is violent, sex offender, that's not a good place for you.
Not a good place at all. It wasn't safe.
No.
So he came after me, and then from thence forward, you are always on alert.
Yeah.
Every single thing that happened,
At any moment.
any noise. I don't know how, even sleeping at night, your antennas are up. You're constantly paying attention.
Well, and they do those counts all through the night and shine lights in it.
you get a light shining in your face every night.
Right.
But
All through the night.
during that whole time period, you are just constantly aware of everyone around you. Even to this day now, I could be at the best of the best places, and if somebody walks up from behind,
Yeah.
and it startles you. It just
And that won't go away for a while. I was talking to you when I was driving and we were talking on the phone. It takes a good year and a half or whatever to try to, and you're kind of getting close to that, where you start feeling like you aren't having to look over your shoulder. But I don't know if that ever goes away. It just, you don't have that feeling all the time.
correct.
And that's the thing that kind of rubs off but
You have an awareness
you have an awareness
of people and things.
Well, you're in a
happening around
primitive environment, so your senses go up.
the caveman of people
Yeah,
killing
it is.
you.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, your senses go up because you're having to survive in a different way. Not necessarily that somebody's going to kill you at any moment, but danger could happen at any moment, and that's what your body becomes aware of.
Right.
So getting into I'm assuming you have a bunk bed, a plastic chair, a locker. Is that what your life is at this point?
Yes, and then I was actually put in a hallway with this bed.
Oh, that's nice.
So people could walk back and forth at night.
Was it overcrowded or something?
Oh, exactly.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which later they finally released some of the people, but
Yeah.
at that initial point it was overcrowded, and here I was.
Yeah.
And you stick out, and I wasn't aware of all the stuff that was going to take place of that there would be a TV for Mexicans.
Yeah.
There'd be a TV for blacks.
Yeah.
There'd be a TV for whites.
Right.
It was just like
that's the
a
primitive
TV for
part
sex
of
offenders.
Yeah.
And nobody crosses those lines.
No.
And you would never go sit where a sex offender ate dinner because then you'd be associated with that. Or you would never go, if there was a black person and you thought this black person was a nice person, you might walk a track with them, but you would never eat dinner with them.
Yeah.
It was the most bizarre.
It is. So did people befriend you as you?
I had a very small group of friends,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't let anyone pass that. And I actually had, a few times that people would break your trust and they would sell you down the river in prison for money.
Yeah.
And I
think the prison term for that is your car. You've got these 2 or 3 people that you hang out with. Yeah.
And I had worked out with a trainer and so forth before I went in. So then going in, I think, well, I'll just go, there's this workout area.
I'll just do that.
Exactly. It's out there. There's all this gym equipment. Yeah. You just don't walk out there and jump on this equipment. It's like, what the heck? This is not Lifetime Fitness, buddy.
It's a different world. Okay, so you got 2 or 3 guys. They're kind of showing you the ropes. Do you get a prison job?
I was asked to teach.
Okay.
But then my job was kind of a phantom job.
All right.
So I had this phantom job that
to teach.
Okay. Because a lot of the prison population that weren't very well educated would come to me because I had this look.
That you should teach.
Exactly. So in doing so, I'm asked to teach on a one-to-one basis.
Okay.
So I did, and I'm helping people, get their GED.
Did that help you though? Feel like you were, and I was leading up to when you're in this environment, because that's why I asked you if you had a job, because sometimes that helps you just eat your time.
Well, it does.
To be busy. But how did you handle hard days in there? I mean, because there's hard days in prison. What did you do as a strategy with that?
Well, there were hard days as far as, did you want visitors? Did you not want visitors?
Does it bring you down or does it bring you up?
I mean, I had a couple of friends that came that were very close friends.
Yeah.
And I will forever be indebted for them to be, a buddy was flying up from Naples. I had a buddy from here driving down. They'd meet, they'd come and visit. My son, my sister, so forth. And then, even afterwards, you're like, I was dealing with the guilt of, I've had this failed marriage now because of this, and how's my son dealing with this, and all that. And then I had my mother living here, and how was she dealing with, it's not even just the press at that point. It's like, how are people reacting to her going, oh, here's her child that, she used to be proud taking her to dinner. Yeah. And now, oh, by the way, he's in federal prison now.
Yeah. Well, I always say that, when someone goes to prison, the family goes to prison.
Oh, exactly.
And then how that affects each one of those people, it's all different. I always look at my girls and my wife, how they all had something different going on in their lives, and they handled it their way. And we also tried to build each other up too when somebody was having a tough time. But it's not just the person that goes to prison. The people on the outside have a hard road to hoe because everything changes. Everything changes.
And then you get these acquaintances. I got the Plastic Country Club crowd.
Sure.
That are, and I'm hearing all these remarks through third party. Yeah. Oh, so-and-so said this, or this person said this at the country club. Yeah. I wonder how he likes prison, or I wonder like this. And then people are starting rumors. Oh, I heard that he got attacked and nearly died. Yeah. They're just making stuff up. And, I listened, and recently somebody made this comment to me, and I kind of follow it now of, what I'm doing and so forth of go where you're celebrated.
Yeah.
Stay away from where you're tolerated.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the best advice for anybody that's out there, because there's so much gossip out there and so many people just love to tell bad news about other people.
It leads. It leads to the news. I mean,
exactly.
Are you going to start off a news story with, and today we had a nice man helping a woman across the street,
exactly.
carrying all of her groceries. No, they want to start with the fact that person got hit and run over, and that they had to send an ambulance, and everybody gathered around and watched it. I don't know why human nature is that way, but I do think people still like to hear good things. but we're so wired to the bad.
So wired.
Yeah. So going back to, so when going and having visits and when you had hard days, did you have like a strategy or like a way that you like read or work out or anything that brought you kind of back up? Walked
so much.
Yeah.
It was just
miles.
I'll bet you I walked every bit of 10 miles a day.
Oh yeah. I'm with you, man.
It was crazy. Yeah. I was the nut that was
You could walk forever because you didn't want to be inside there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it got me out of there.
Yeah.
So then once they did their medical evaluation, here I am walking.
But that cleared your head a little bit.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
So then a group of, there was another group of people that came after a guy that I was walking with, and they went to attack them and say, look, to me, if my family doesn't send money to their family,
yeah,
they're going to cut him. And there's this cut called a 150. So they cut him from the corner of their eye down to the corner of their mouth. And the reason they call it a 150, it takes 150 stitches to sew them back up on this cut.
And this was all basically a shakedown to get it from one family to the next family.
Well, you're a rich white guy. Your family could just
sure.
What's $5,000
yeah,
to you?
Shake you down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the problem is if you would ever do that, there'd
then
be another one
hit all the time
every week. It'd be a $5,000 week.
So when was it, Bill, that you realized that you wanted to switch these prisons up and get out of there?
Well, then at that point, I was in the prison. This whole thing came, and they cut that friend of mine. And they
he did get cut.
He did get cut.
Okay.
And then I was told I was next.
Okay.
If money wasn't wired, I was next.
Okay.
I sent an email from their email system back to my sister for her to
And those are
forward it.
monitored with the telephone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I can't read all of them,
mm-hmm.
so I'll just take my chances.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked her to forward that to my attorney and to my son.
Mm-hmm.
And then the attorney and I spoke on the phone, and then he said, you need to go into protective custody.
Yeah.
You need to go into protective custody. So they were going to be switching me over to a camp to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
They put me down in the shoe. The shoe.
Special housing unit.
Yeah.
Which is the hole.
Which is the worst place ever.
That's the only place you don't want to, I mean, definitely don't want to be.
Prison's
prison.
bad, but this is like the worst part of prison.
They're going to lock you down, was it
24/7, you're like in a 10x8 room.
Yeah.
And you're wearing orange clothes that the orange is coming off on your skin. It's the most bizarre thing ever. And here you sit. So
how long did you sit?
Well,
And what did you do in there?
I sat longer than you could ever imagine, because then COVID broke out. So at that point, I should have been getting out according to what my attorney had told me initially.
Yeah.
But in reality, with COVID, and they were going to let anybody out during the COVID period.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter what the reason was.
Just going to let you go.
I sat there for 8 months.
What?
I didn't see daylight.
You were in the hole for 8 months.
8 months.
What in the world, and how did you handle that?
So I had a shower.
Yep.
A toilet that had a sink built into it.
Yeah.
I had a bed that had at tops a 1-inch thick mattress at very top. Mm-hmm. And there I sat.
What were you able to read?
They would
books?
come by with books that would be shredded, and, chapters missing out of it, and a radio.
Okay.
And you had these radios that would crank up, and they would run off of a crank, so you'd sit there and crank the thing.
And then it would go out, and you have to crank it back up.
10 minutes, you'd be cranking it, charging this rechargeable battery in it. And I listened to so many ministers. I mean, probably 4 or 5 hours a day, because I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, and there's plenty of.
Did you have a window?
No
window. So you couldn't tell what time of day it was, or
nothing,
or what about communicating with the guy that was next door to you?
They would talk back and forth. And the most odd thing of the whole prison thing of being in the shoe was they would then take strings. They'd take all these strings, they'd pull them off their blankets, pull them off of whatever, and they would tie these strings together, and then they would take like toothpaste or whatever things, and they would like connect the string to that,
Share it.
and they would slide it.
Okay.
It would almost be like
Game.
it was a form of communication. They'd slide stuff back and forth,
Yeah.
back and forth.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
That's crazy. So, did you feel like you were losing your mind being in there 8 months?
Well, you would be allowed to walk up, and there'd be a little bitty drop thing on the door, and then they would bring a phone to you twice a week, and you could make a phone call.
Okay, so you could connect with the outside world twice a week and make a phone call, and they bring it to your cell. Okay,
and they wouldn't let me have legal phone calls, which I don't know how they got by.
I don't
with
know
that.
how you get by with that.
So then those phone calls that I should be using to call my family, I'm calling my attorney on a cell phone.
Yeah,
because I put him on my phone list.
Yeah,
and I'm dialing his number, and thank goodness that he was nice enough to answer those phone calls. And I'm like, how are we doing on this thing, and so forth, and how am I getting,
So he was really the one telling you probably when things were going to happen and give you an idea. And you were trying to get transferred to Marion, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah.
He was the only sign of hope that I had.
Yeah.
And my son was having conversations with him. My sister was having conversations with him. And I would be calling him periodically, and he's trying to get a hold of people to get me transferred. And I'll just tell you right now, this attorney, I mean, he was phenomenal in the processing of everything. And it was just, when I called him and said I was finally getting transferred, I mean, I can't remember if it was then or when I was at the camp when I was saying I was getting released. He choked up. Mm. I mean, this guy was like, he was a good guy, and he had my best interest at heart. So we kind of stayed through this whole process of being there at Lexington, Kentucky, and then moving from there and then getting transferred. I was put on a plane, and they shackle up your ankles. They put you could hardly walk. You're put into mass population, and they put you on a plane, Con Air. Did you ever take Con Air?
I did not. I had a coughing fit. I did not.
So Con Air.
I'm thinking that my voice sounds really funny right now. But I did get a chance to get shackled. And that is horrible.
It's unbelievable.
That is the most dehumanizing feeling, to have your ankles to your waist. It's just horrible.
They have you handcuffed, and then they have a chain around your waist, and the chain goes around your waist and connects it to the handcuffs, which then another chain drops down to your feet, that your ankles are shackled. It's and you can hardly take a half of a step.
So that takes you to the Oklahoma Center, right?
So then I'm at Oklahoma Center, and they don't tell you that. You still don't. Still, lack of information is everything in prison. So they don't tell you anything until all at once. I had Thanksgiving in the Oklahoma Center, and all at once in the middle of the night, they come in at 3 or something in the morning to go, get your stuff. Like, how long would this take to pack, And you're leaving. And they bring you down, and then I flew, and I was taken to Marion.
So what was your thoughts when you got to Marion?
Well, I was just thinking, like, this is going to be so much better, but then you're put into the shoe again because now COVID's still going on.
So you ended up with the shoe again because of COVID.
Exactly. So they've got you locked into the shoe my second time. Again, they don't tell you anything. And the shoe at Marion was, I can't even tell you how bad it was. It was what you see of a... Oh, it was just so old. I mean, and this was from the shoe.
How long did you have to stay in that one?
Well, you would have just been in and out, of course, but when they tested people for COVID,
right?
Guess what happened? Someone tested positive.
So everybody stays in.
So now everybody stayed in for, I think it was 2 weeks at that point.
Gosh.
And the shoe at Marion was really it was a maximum security prison at Marion initially, and there you are in this type of an environment, and you stayed there, and they would never tell you if you were going to be there for 14 days, 21 days.
Right, you have no idea.
They wouldn't give you any information whatsoever. So I turned around and sat through that thing. They wouldn't, at that point, they wouldn't even let you use well, there was no air conditioning. There was no heating hardly at all. I had a friend that was in Marion's shoe waiting to come into the camp that got frostbite. That's how cold it was.
Man,
So the sinks were connected to the toilet, and he would take the
that's horrible.
hot water button and stand on one leg and put his other leg into the sink and run this water that was a little bit warmer than cold water over his feet to keep them from freezing. Otherwise, who knows what? He still had frostbite. It was crazy.
How long were you in this place?
I was there for
2 weeks?
probably, yeah.
Okay, so you finally get to the camp. Is it drastically different than
No,
what
it's
you've
like
done?
day and night different.
Day and night.
So I get to the camp and they move you downstairs. You're like the lowest tier there could be.
Yeah.
And it was a 2-level building.
Yeah.
And you're put in the lower level, and I go down to the lower level, and they put me into this cell area. There should be like 4 in a room. There were 2 in a room. Mine had just myself
Okay.
in there. And then all of a sudden you're up and about and you're moving around. And you remember, I just went through 8 months of being in the shoes. So being able to come, go, do what.
Yeah, and because I never transferred like that. The whole reacclimation of, getting your stuff and, getting to know people again. Did it seem like it took very long to do that, or did you think, okay, I kind of got this down now. I know what I'm doing.
You're much better
Yeah.
at, first of all, you're better at reading the people. You're better at understanding the people. You're better at who to stay away from.
Right.
You have a sixth sense.
You got a much better sense because you've
Right.
been through it.
And the ones that are rowdy, the ones that are all hiding out smoking, the ones that are like drinking, the ones that are, because all this stuff is snuck in,
Sure.
so.
Especially Marion. That's where my dad was, and he said there was the woods.
Oh, exactly.
And they would bring stuff in through there, and even food and stuff, like
it was
McDonald's
crazy.
and stuff. But see, I had a little bit different experience. More not like Lexington, but Leavenworth was a camp, but it was made out to be a low, and it never got certified, so it had a fence around it.
So the camp even had a fence around
Yeah.
it? Ooh.
So, but I mean, I had a job where I left every day outside the fence to the food warehouse. So but there was a lot of guys.
Warehouse, you were like,
Oh yeah.
that's like the best
Yeah, it
place
was
to
prison
be.
cool.
Because
But-
food drops.
Oh yeah, everywhere. But a lot of guys stayed in that area, in that warehouse, or not the warehouse, but the fenced in area, and never left. And for me, I walked about a mile away to the food warehouse, and that felt like some kind of a little bit free. I walk all the way around the big Leavenworth place, but I did hear that about Marion though, because we had guys come there that would transfer from Marion to Leavenworth. They hated Leavenworth because it was locked down, whereas Marion was kind of wide open.
It was wide
beyond
open.
the fence.
Totally wide open. And the guys are buzzing around.
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
gators and so forth. And there's guys on the yard crew and
Yeah.
they're cutting grass and so forth.
Right.
And of course I get there and the guy from education immediately walks up to me and he goes, "Where did you go to school?" And I said, "Lafayette."
Yeah,
Meaning the Lafayette High School with the
Yeah.
St. Louis question.
right.
And he goes, "No, I mean college." And I said, "Oh, I went to SMS."
Yeah.
And he's like, "So you did go to college?" And he's like excited. He's like, "You're in education."
There you
now."
go again.
Back in education.
I think
And you know what's so funny about this whole
so
thing?
you should probably play an actor role of somebody that does education, because that's just what
Exactly.
you're assumed to be.
I'm not a doctor, but
No, I play
once.
one on TV. I'm not a teacher, but I play one in prison.
It's pretty funny because I remember there would be guys that would be asking questions of how to spell stuff. They're sending letters. They're doing this. They're doing their legal work, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And then they'd ask a question. Somebody else would go to answer. They're like, "Shut up. I want him to answer the question. He knows how to spell." Or
He's the guy.
Yeah.
So you're closer to home now. I'm assuming that probably it's easier for the family for visits and that.
Just the opposite.
Just the opposite.
I asked them not to come
because the visits maybe, because I've heard different things about visits, because I know Sam was on here, Samantha was on here a couple episodes ago, and she talked about that it brought her down to see her family in there, for them to see her like that. So for me, because Julie came all the time, it was like I got plugged into the outside world, so I felt like I was sitting on the fence. So I had but it's very sad when they leave.
I can't imagine that.
It's a very sad thing when
It was humiliating to me.
you didn't like the feel.
I didn't want my mother to
Yeah.
see me in this environment.
Yeah,
My son,
get that.
I missed. I can't even explain how I missed him because I'd gone through this divorce.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, he's now like your primary
Your connection.
family.
Yeah.
And here you are missing seeing him. And then I have 2 grandchildren.
Yeah.
At that point, I had 1.
Yeah.
But, I've got this one that I'm like, I can't even explain that you can't see him.
Well, tell me this, because you've gone down to the how close were you to getting out when you got to Marion?
Well, at that point,
Because you spent a lot of time.
oh my gosh, it's just crazy. Well, at that time with the whole COVID situation, then they started releasing people out
Yeah.
for COVID. And that's how I was released out and I was let go because of the COVID.
So you were released fairly quickly. What did it?
Months.
What was it?
Months.
Months. So did they just all of a sudden tell you, Bill, hey, by the way, you're leaving?
No, because you're still doing the whole thing of being
So what happened?
segregated. At that
Okay.
point.
So what happened? How did you know that you were leaving early?
I got called in and they called me over and I go in and they turn around and they say, we're going to move you. And I said, what do you mean move me?
Yeah.
Because they never tell you anything.
Right.
Well, we're going to move you, but you're going to have to go into isolation. I'm like, isolation for what? Well, you're going home confinement. I'll just tell you right now, your eyes well up.
Oh yeah.
Your eyes well up.
What are you thinking?
I mean, I was elated.
Yeah.
I think that I went back and I went to the wall phone
Yeah.
and I made a phone. I called my son.
I was going to ask who you called.
And I called my son and then I called my sister.
It had to be
And
emotional.
I couldn't speak.
Yeah.
I couldn't speak. I mean, I dialed them. They answered, and I
you were
couldn't talk.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
I
yeah,
can't say I'm going home. Yeah.
exactly. And then, of course, they did the famous thing that they always do, change the date. So then after you're there and you're ready to go home,
They crush you with a new.
and then you start hearing horror stories from other inmates that are there. There was a guy from like Belleville that his family came to pick him up, and then when they came to pick him up, they said, "You're not going home." So then you always have that in the back of your head going, is this going to happen?
Well, you
to me?
never trust until you get into the car.
Even then I didn't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So they move around the date, but you finally get a date. Who comes to get you?
So then my son and my sister.
Son and sister come. And tell me about walking out of there.
So I walked out with another inmate at the same time.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is he and I only live a few miles apart from one another.
Here in St. Louis.
Here in St. Louis.
Oh, that's crazy.
So he was released and I was released for home confinement. And we walked out the same day. And you walk out, you get in the car, you're just like.
There's no other feeling like it, right?
I told my sister to bring me separate clothes because, the shorts and so forth that I had in there, a T-shirt.
Yeah.
I'm in the back of her car changing clothes because I was like, I never want to wear these clothes again.
No. Get rid of these.
Exactly. So the weird thing was stopping. We stopped like a Panera or something from leaving there at camp. And walking in, you feel like everybody's staring at you.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the weirdest thing because it's like, why would they be staring at me? Or do they know who I am? Or, it's just kind of like, and even when you came back and you would go out to dinner or walk into church or walk in anywhere that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What is it like? What has it been like getting back into society?
Well, you get the typical gossip people. The few times it happened that you'd walk in someplace and you'd see somebody nudge with their elbow.
Yeah.
And somebody else would like give
There
a
he
nod.
is.
Did you see that guy?
Yeah.
He's back or whatever. Most people are very forgiving with the whole thing, and they realize what the story.
You're just trying to get back.
That, and a lot of them have now heard what really took place and what the press said was not the truth.
Yeah.
And what was on the news is really not the news.
Yeah.
It was like this.
I also think, Bill, that there's a feeling with a lot of people that if somebody's really trying to come back and get back into their world, there's a good segment of people that want that to happen. And then there's a segment that always wants you just to be punished.
Well, there's a segment that wants the best for you.
Yeah.
But then you've got the other side. I mean, like I told you before, my absolute best friend dumped me like a hot potato.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, and that hurts.
Oh, I can't. I felt like this was like a brother.
Yeah.
And then you get the other side of people that you were not that close to coming out going,
It'll do anything for you.
What can I do for you?
Yeah.
And I hold those people in so much higher regard.
Oh gosh.
And then I see the other people. I'm like, did I get used all these years? Was
What
I
happened?
just being, exactly.
Yeah, what happened?
Exactly.
I'm confused.
And then you get people that, make these judgment calls that you just think, who are you to be saying anything about me?
Yeah.
It's
So tell me, in all this that has happened, Bill, this whole thing, what do you think's your biggest takeaway from this whole experience you've gone through?
I think I'm a way better person now than I ever was before. I can go to the best place or the worst place and be comfortable with people.
Yeah.
I could go to Buckingham Palace for dinner.
Yeah.
Or I could go to the projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I could find a way to be able to relate to those people and be able to speak to those people at both places. I don't make judgment calls like I did before.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't really read the paper because I know what lies that they printed about me. So I'm just kind of like, well, everything else in there is a lie as well.
Right.
I don't really watch the local news because I know of how they twisted everything.
Yeah.
So, that's a whole nother realm.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm a better judge of character now. There's a lot of plastic people. There's a lot of people, we had big parties at our house and so forth. There's a lot of people that come to your house, drink your drink, eat your food.
Why not?
And, it's just.
And they're not really that great of friends.
And they were never there for you in the crisis.
Yeah.
Never there for you in the crisis.
No, and I think that's a good tip for people. I think what you're saying is you've went through this experience and you've seen people in all different walks of life, and there's more commonality than not in a lot of situations.
Oh, right.
So I think that does make you have a different perspective on the world of when you walk into a room, that feeling that, hey, I can hang out with this guy or this guy.
Exactly.
And it's all good. Yeah.
It's, I've gone through some medical issues recently that have been like life-changing. And even during all of that, people reach out to me.
Yeah.
And they're like, what can we do to help you?
Yeah. And I hope you can get through all that, Bill, because I know it's not easy with the situation you're in with, being on probation and all those different things that go into treatment. But hopefully that's one of the things that can change as we go forward is people, no matter what, need the best health care they can get when they're needing that.
Oh, exactly.
So I'm hoping that all works out for you because
I really think
you need to be able to go and enjoy your best life going forward.
Prison toughened me up a little bit.
Yeah.
We're going through a rough patch here. Next year's got to be like awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. What haven't I asked you, Bill?
I don't know. What other questions do you have?
I want to, and we've got Susie Gorman here taking pictures, by the way. Susie, hi. Susie's one of the most awesome photographers of anyone that I've ever run across that I know of. And she's
Susie swore that she was going to make me look 29 again.
I tell you, she's been a great family friend, and I think she's one of the coolest girls. So very proud that Susie stopped by here to take some pictures. So she's one of the good ones.
I was texting you going, is it okay if Susie swings by here? And you're like, absolutely.
Absolutely. I love that girl.
She's like the best.
All right, everybody. Well, I just wanted to say and thank you, Bill, for being on here. Loving the likes, subscribe, hit that subscribe button, leave a review on Apple. If anybody's still looking for a book out there, Nightmare Success, I've got one. And you can check us out on YouTube whenever we do Zoom. Of course, we didn't do Zoom today, so you're going to have to look Bill up some other way. But appreciate it. And Bill, good story, man.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Nightmare Success, in and out. Thanks for being here today.